The Soviet Union was obsessed with control. Not control of borders, but control of people. Anyone without proper documents was considered a problem. Vagrants, former prisoners, peasants who had fled famine, people who simply existed in the wrong place. The solution was simple on paper: remove them. In 1933, thousands of people were rounded up from cities like Moscow and Leningrad. They were told they were being relocated, given no explanation, no preparation. Most were wearing only light clothing. Many had no shoes. They were loaded onto trains. For days, they traveled in overcrowded freight cars. No sanitation, little food, almost no water. People collapsed standing up. Others never stood again. When the trains stopped, they were far from anywhere they recognized. They were taken to barges and sent down the Ob River into Siberia. Cold, remote, endless. At the end of the journey was a small island, barely 3 kilometers long, swampy, covered in mosquitoes and mud. It was called Nazino Island. The people were unloaded and left there. No shelters, no tools, no instructions. They were given bags of flour, no ovens, no pots, no way to cook it. People mixed the flour with river water and drank it raw. Many became sick immediately. Others starved faster. The guards were unprepared. They had little food themselves. No medical supplies, no plan beyond containment. The island was never meant to sustain life. Within days, order collapsed. People formed groups for protection. Stronger prisoners took control of resources. Weaker ones disappeared. Violence became normal. Beatings over flour, stabbings over scraps, people drowned trying to escape. The guards fired into crowds when unrest grew too loud. Some bodies were buried in shallow pits. Others were left where they fell. After the first week, hunger became something else. It was no longer pain, it was instinct. Witnesses later described people watching each other, not with anger, with calculation. Those who died were stripped quickly. Flesh was cut away, not hidden, not denied. It happened in daylight. People knew. Some tried to stop it. Most were too weak. Others joined. One survivor later testified that people were attacked not to be killed, but to be harvested. Limbs were taken while victims were still alive. This was not madness. It was systematic desperation. Women were targeted more often. Children did not last long. The guards knew. They reported it. But help did not come. Instead, more people were sent. The island became a closed loop of starvation. Those who tried to escape were hunted. Some swam for the shore and drowned. Others made it to land only to be captured and returned. By the second month, the island was littered with remains, bones, torn clothing, signs of campfires made from wet wood. The stench carried across the water. Eventually, Soviet officials investigated, not out of mercy, out of embarrassment. Reports were written, testimonies recorded, numbers counted. Of the roughly 6,000 people sent to Nazino Island, fewer than 2,000 survived. Many were permanently broken, mentally, physically. The report concluded that the experiment was a failure. The documents were sealed. The island was abandoned. No memorial was built. No apology issued. For decades, the story was erased. Survivors rarely spoke, not because they were silenced, but because language failed. How do you describe a place where survival required becoming something unrecognizable? Nazino Island was not cursed. It was engineered, a place where systems collapsed and humanity followed. A reminder that when people are reduced to numbers, the rules disappear, and what emerges is not a monster, it is hunger. And hunger does not negotiate. When the survivors were finally removed from the island, nothing was said. No announcement, no explanation, no acknowledgement of what had happened. They were simply taken away. Some were sent to labor camps, others to settlements they would never leave. A few were released back into society. None returned as they had been. Those who survived Nazino Island carried something with them that could not be documented. Not just trauma, a redefinition of reality. Many later testified that hunger had stripped away thought itself, that morality did not disappear suddenly, it eroded, slowly. At first, people helped each other, shared flour, shared water, shared warmth. Then the sharing stopped, not because people became evil, but because there was nothing left to share. Witnesses later described the moment things changed. It wasn't when the first person died. Death was already common. It was when the idea of later disappeared, when there was no future to plan for, only the next hour, the next minute. Survival became immediate, mechanical. Human relationships lost meaning. People stopped asking names. stopped forming attachments. They avoided eye contact because recognition made it harder. After the island was emptied, investigators walked through what remained. They found makeshift shelters that had collapsed, trees stripped of bark, bones scattered across the mud, evidence of fires built with whatever could burn. The official report described the island as unsuitable for settlement. That was the language used, not inhumane, not criminal, unsuitable. The report circulated quietly within the Soviet system. It was never meant for public eyes. The experiment was labeled a logistical failure, not a moral one. No individual was punished. No policy was publicly reversed. Instead, procedures were adjusted. Future deportations were handled differently. More preparation, more secrecy. Nazino Island was treated as a lesson, not for compassion, but for efficiency. The survivors were interviewed. Many were unable to speak coherently. Others refused to speak at all. Some answered questions flatly, without emotion. When asked about the cannibalism, several responded the same way. There was no choice, not as an excuse, as a statement of fact. One survivor explained that hunger changes time. Minutes stretch into agony. Hours collapse into confusion. Thoughts fragment. The body demands action long before the mind can judge it. Another described watching someone die and feeling nothing, not relief, not horror, nothing, only focus on the possibility of food. These accounts disturbed even the investigators, not because of what people had done, but because of how easily it had happened. There was no madness, no hysteria, just adaptation. Nazino Island demonstrated something the system did not want to examine, that human behavior is not fixed, that under the right conditions, civilization dissolves quietly, without rebellion, without ideology, just hunger. For years, the island was avoided. Local residents knew about it. They did not visit, not because of superstition, but because of memory. Fishermen avoided its shores. Boats passed without stopping. The island became a blank spot. Later, historians uncovered the documents, the sealed reports, the testimonies, the photographs. When the story finally emerged, it shocked the world. But not for long. It was absorbed into history, labeled an atrocity, filed away. But something about Nazino Island resists that treatment, because it wasn't a war, it wasn't chaos, it was administration, the result of paperwork, decisions made far away by people who would never see the consequences. That is what makes it unsettling. The island did not reveal monsters, it revealed systems, and what systems can allow. Survivors often described guilt, not just for what they had done, but for having survived. Many struggled with reintegration. Food remained difficult. Some hoarded it, others avoided it. Eating triggered memories, not of taste, of necessity, of calculation. Several survivors later took their own lives. Others lived quietly, never speaking of the island. Families noticed changes, emotional distance, sudden silence, a tendency to withdraw. Nazino Island followed them, not physically, but psychologically. Even decades later, when asked about it, some survivors responded the same way. I don't want to remember. Not because the memories were vivid, but because remembering meant acknowledging what they had become. The Soviet government never officially apologized. The island remains unmarked. No plaque, no memorial, just land, mud, water, trees, as if forgetting could erase it. But places remember, not in the way people do, but in what they represent. Nazino Island stands as proof that the boundary between order and collapse is thin. That morality depends on conditions. That when survival is reduced to numbers, humanity becomes optional. This story is not about cannibalism. That was the outcome. It is about abandonment. About what happens when people are placed somewhere with no future, no structure, no hope. Nazino Island was not cursed. It was designed. And that is what makes it impossible to forget. Because if it could happen there, it can happen anywhere. All it takes is silence and time.